Welcome also from my side. I'm very honored to moderate today's session on the wonderful topic of the Indian art of putting raga into painting. And we are so very happy, of course, to have with us two specialists on raga and ragamala, the Ragamala researcher and Rietberg Museum guest curator Sonika Soni. And also yes, please. And also vocalist Vir Amar Dasmahapatra with us tonight. Thank you very much. First, I'd like to have a few words about the structure of today's event. We will start with a short Q&A style introduction of both Vir and Sonika, as well as to raga and ragamala as an art style. Afterwards, we will admire three kinds of paintings with the corresponding poetry and also the music, of course. And afterwards, there will be time for you to ask questions and perhaps, if you're up to, even a fourth painting. After that, we will have an apéro. Yes, and we hope that you can stay a little and maybe have a little chat and drink something after this event. Now let's begin with the journey through sounds and words and colors. I want to start with a question to Vir. So we know you work as vice president of the talent management and learning section in a European multinational company, which means you are working in a very corporate setting, very unlike me and also Sonika. And yet you are a very passionate vocalist as well. So how did you get into classical Indian music? How did you get into raga music specifically? And what exactly does raga mean actually in music? Very nice to have you give us an introduction right now.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So as Samira said, my full name is Vir Amar Dasmahapatra. It's a mouthful. And I work today as VP of Talent Management and Learning for a company called Schneider Electric, and I have a regional responsibility for Europe operations. And what does a corporate profile like me how does a corporate profile like me find his way into raga music? Completely by accident is the answer. So there was it was a long time ago when my father was testing out a music system in our home in Calcutta, which is on the eastern side of India for those of you who might be familiar. And I happened to be there in that room quite by chance, and he played a cassette. So you can imagine this was in the 1990s when we still had cassettes, and he played a cassette by one of the foremost musicians of Indian classical music of that time, and arguably even today, the late Pandit Jasraj. And the moment I heard his voice, it was like a bulb came on in my head, and I could not listen to anything else for days. I listened to that cassette on a little Walkman that I had, and it wore out. I think the tape, because I was listening to it morning and night. And that is the power of this music, that a teenage boy with very little exposure to Indian classical music or any understanding even of it can get captured so instantly. And all it required was curiosity and a willingness to listen and give the music a chance to soak in. Later on, as we go further, we will talk to you about the meaning of raga as something that colors the mind. And Jasrajji's voice and the ragas he sang that day colored my mind for life. I was addicted. I could not move away from that music. And even though I do not come from a family of musicians and I'm not a full-time musician, I knew that this music was going to be an obsession for life. So throughout my high school years, my university years, I continued to learn this music. And I was very fortunate that I came into contact with some of the best gurus that my country had and has. And while I'm not merely worthy to take their names and to be recognized as one of their well-known students, it is my humble attempt to try and make this music accessible to contemporary audiences in whichever way I can. And over the last several years, I've been doing several projects along that line. So that's how I how the music found me rather than me finding the music. And to tell you what is this music that captured me, heart, mind, and soul, we talk about rags. So you can think of rags as the units of Indian classical music in many ways. And before I talk to you about rags, I'd like to talk to you about, give you a slightly theoretical perspective. It'll take just a few minutes. So all music is made up of notes, right? So you know the 7 notes as you hear them in any music. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You all know that. We call it sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, sa in Indian classical music. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, sa. That's all it is. And the notes I just sang for you are mostly natural notes. And there are 7 natural notes. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni. And then music also has some other notes, which you see below in the second row. They are the yellow ones with the underline are flat notes. I'll give you an example of one. So if you look at the note re, which is called similarly in Western and Indian music, the natural note is sa, re, and the flat note is sa, re. Can you tell the difference? It's okay. So we get 12 notes like that. And when you can make a permutation or a combination of these notes to produce any kind of music there is in the world. There is no music that goes beyond the 12 notes. So if you move to the next slide, what a raga is, just to make it super simple, a raga is a selection of notes which is bound together by a certain grammar. And if I explain that a little bit, there's a rag called Hindol, and we will show you a painting based on Hindol also. This rag is a combination of these notes. If you sing the notes, it is sa, ga, ma, dha, ni, sa. 2 notes have been dropped from this. The re and the pa has been dropped. So you get sa, ga, ma, dha, ni, sa. This is the selection of notes. A selection of notes is not enough to make a rag. Every rag has not just a selection of notes, but a certain grammar of how to move and how to make combinations within those notes. So every rag is like a language in itself. And the way many of us like to explain it, every rag is also like a personality in itself, capable of displaying many different emotions. What I've written for you below the yellow line is a simple movement in the rag called Hindol. So if you take the selection of notes and you put them in a certain grammar, now you get a rag called Hindol, which has a certain character. Let's see what that's a bit like. I'll sing exactly what I put on the screen. And now I have to look at the screen because our music is constantly improvisational. We're not used to reading from sheets. But just for the sake of this exercise, I will try to sing it the way I've written it over here. Increase the volume of the tambour a little bit. Sa, ni, da, ni, ma, ni, da, sa, sa, da, ma, ga, ma, ga, ma, ga, sa, ni, da, ni, da, ni, ma, ga, sa. That is a movement in rag Hindol. Now, if we are free to make improvisations with a basic grammar, and that would sound something like this. This is one sentence I just spoke in this language of this rag, using the notes. There is no other note added over here. And with this, I can make as many sentences as my imagination allows. It's kind of like jazz. You have some basic rules and you have a selection of notes. And within that, you keep improvising, innovating, and it happens on the spot. This is not music which can be repeated in its exact form many times, unless you are super deliberate about it, or unless you know very little of the music. So the more one lets one's imagination roam within the language, the more it comes. So that is the Rag Hindola basic glimpse for you. Is it making sense?
It will make much more sense when we show the painting along with it.
The last thing I will say is there's a saying in Sanskrit, Ranjayati iti raga, meaning that which colors the mind is a raga. So if I ask you all to close your eyes for a minute and I sing the same thing, see what it feels like in your mind. I will sing a few notes of Hindolagi. Just close your eyes and be with me for a minute. I ask you to open your eyes.
What did you see?
Can I request just words from the audience? One word. If you had to describe what that felt like to you, what is the word you would use? Longing? Okay. Anyone else?
Well, gonna see later what it really was longing. Now I'd like to go to you, Sonika. Going to the actual painting. You're a guest creator, as you said before, at Museum Rietberg and a Ragamala researcher who is more focused on the physical expression of the raga we just heard in paintings, the actual Ragamala, if I'm right. In the online introduction, we have tried to capture the meaning of Ragamala as something like garland of musical melodies. However, the concept of raga, as we just learned, means a lot more than simply a melody or something fixed like a melody. Now, can you tell us how the non-tangible concept of raga transfers into the realm of the visible and is materialized in paintings, and which aspects of this transition are especially fascinating for you? Yeah, thank you very much. Let me take it away.
Thanks, Samira. And I'm like still processing your music. It was so beautiful. But so the transformation from what we just heard, which was absolutely abstract. So it took a while for everybody to formulate it in one word. It is difficult. It's abstract. We can feel it, but expression is extremely difficult. So in medieval times, some of the poets and some of the musicologists took the emotive power, like, what we felt just now, and imagined it, the whole expression of it as a human being in a certain situation. We can imagine, we could have our imaginations also, but what they imagined got somehow sanctified, and painters later on took those poems and illustrated them as beautiful compositions. And that's what we're going to see. So what we just explained is that how a melody is created. From that melody, so the poets and some of the sahitya, which is literature. So in some of the literature and some of the poetry, we find the references of how people tried, of how the poets and some of the musicologists imagined this music as, like I said, as human beings, either a male or a female in a certain situation, in a certain very complex life, mostly romantic life situation. And so this is the combination here. So it's a melody, abstract to poem and to painting. And I tell you, it was one of the most prolific themes which was painted in India. And it was always painted in series. So it's not just one particular melody which would be painted. It always comes as a series. And it necessarily has a minimum of 36 paintings or 36 melodies. And it can have up to more than 150 also. So these series, which are like so many melodies painted together, form like a garland, which is called the Ragamala, the garland of melodies, musical melodies, painted musical melodies. So this is interesting here to visualize that what a painting sounds like, how does a painting can capture the essence of a music which we just try to hear. So let's see if, and I also, before I jump onto that, I wanted to tell that, you know, how these music and the paintings were enjoyed in the former times. They were not necessarily meant as how we are sitting and discussing it today. So for example, this is one of the paintings from the north of India in Pahadi region in Himachal Pradesh, where we see a king looking at a painting, not necessarily a Ragamala painting, but looking at a painting. And the artist is standing right behind him who made the painting for this patron. And while he's looking at the painting, we can see that there is some audience and there are some musicians. So they're playing probably the certain raga, which can condition his mind and can prepare him to look at the paintings. So it was always an intimate circle of people. So you could have some queens or kings or some royal people sitting together, mostly made for royal people and nobility who could afford, who had the time and leisure, and who could indulge into the highest form of aesthetic experience, including all forms, music and poetry and painting. So here is just one example, and we come back to the Hindola.
Can I ask one single question? So that person who drew the painting, would that be someone like you right now? Like explaining what it's all about, like telling the king, yeah, here, you see this, it's supposed to mean this.
Exactly.
Well, we're gonna enjoy this right now and with the next painting.
That is how it could do. Exactly. So this is what Vir just sang, Hindola Raga. And let me try and at least, I'm going to attempt to explain how it connects to the music and how one can bring or try to understand the essence of the music in this painting. What's happening in this painting is, this is a springtime in India, say March and April. And which is the time when usually it does not rain. But here we see rain-laden clouds. So it's an unexpected occasion when all of a sudden there were clouds on an unexpected period of time, which puzzled everybody. And there is a king who, along with his queens, came onto a terrace and tried making music along with the rumbling of the clouds. And what we see here is that this is early morning time, where there is still dark, but we see the painting lit. So if you see at the top, above the clouds and above these birds, there is a streak, a golden streak, which is lightning. So the painting is literally lit because of the lightning effect. And what's happening here is a preparation for a musical concert. So he is still holding a musical instrument, a veena in his hand. He's not playing it. There's this other woman who's extending a shawl because springtime is when there is still nip in the air. So it's a little cold. So she's extending the shawl for the king. The other one here is just trying to air him. And the other one is holding like this other musical instrument, which is called cymbals. So the music is about to start. It's all a preparation. So it's a joyous occasion. It's a celebration of an unexpected event. Vir, can you please present like how an auspicious occasion would be formulated into a poem or one of the bandesh, which is some lyrics which are associated to this special occasion.
Sure, and we have one like that for you to do. What you see in the text above in the light green rectangle is the lyrics as they are in the language. And this language is called Braj Bhasha, which is one of the older dialects of northern India. And below is the translation in the dark green. So you can see what the words actually mean. allow me a moment to just configure the beats, because today we don't have live musicians. So I'm playing all the music for you through an app, and I'm singing.
Wait a minute. Before you sing, I actually wanted to present it after, but I think it makes much more sense if I actually tell it beforehand. That what we also see in this painting is a prominent swing in the center, which is golden swing. And one of the words in Hindi language for swing is Hindola, which is the name for the rag itself. And while he's singing, try to focus on the motion of from one note to the other, which somehow resembles to the motion of the swing.
Do you notice certain glides in the music? A different way of singing it would be but that is a different rag. It is the glides and the gliding movements between the notes that distinguish Hindol from other rags. And a different rag with similar notes would be sung differently. And even though, let's say, the DNA is very similar, in the expression, you would make a clear difference between it. So this gliding movement is called meend, which in Western music is also known as glissando, I believe.
Very nice. Though in Western music, it's never the center of the very style.
No.
And here it really gets pulled into the importance. Now, looking at these paintings, and also as you described, there's a lot of different elements kind of intricately orchestrated in order to express this very feeling, this feeling, maybe also the sound of thunder, the feeling of sitting on a slide, the joy of kind of like expecting something from a nice day, perhaps. Now, what are the elements you would look for first when looking at a Ragamala painting, when you kind of have a new one in your hands? And also, what are the elements to look for in detail? Thank you.
So in Ragamala, in these paintings, almost everything contributes to the overall mood which is happening in the painting, or which the painting is supposed to express. For example, in this painting, what if there was no swing? Would we be able to connect it with the name Hindola that easily? So that is, and then there is actually a king, and the music, the lyrics of the song said that let's welcome the beloved, which is also welcoming the unexpected, the rain-laden clouds and the lightning early in the morning. And and in the poems, it's very interesting that it lists very meticulously, especially the time of the day and the season, which is very specific to each of the ragas, which I think for the audience, and which is, which gives the maximum impact, so that you can have the maximum aesthetic experience of the music. And these paintings, I think they were made as a medium, to focus on. So you do not necessarily have to look at a painting to be able to enjoy the music. This is just a means so that you know what is the emotion behind when you listen to the music, so that you can experience it fully. And all of these, these are some of the words that I've taken out, like what you asked. Like in the poems, it mentions phase of the moon also sometimes, or if it is the sun, the position of the sun, time of the day, there is season, there are physical attributes. For example, in this painting, the king is supposed to be wearing yellow because it also represents, like I said, that the season here is the spring season, which represents the mustard fields in India. So everything in the painting represents it contributes to the theme of the painting. Let me illustrate it with another beautiful example. This is called Ragini Dhanashri. And what's happening in this painting is that it's a painting of, like somebody said, longing or a missed lover. So here is this one beautiful woman who's supposed to be dark complexioned. In the poem, it's written that she is dark complexion. And on a particular evening, on that painting that you see, that in the evening, there is a thunder roll, and she is already missing the beloved, which is represented by the empty bed chamber in the composition. And she is missing him, and there is a thunder roll, and the rumbling of the clouds echoes in her heart, and she starts missing the lover so dearly that she has to see him. Now, in this world where 300 or 400 years before, there was no photography or no visual means to or we could not video call or whatever. So she starts making the portrait of the beloved. And the complexity here is that before the clouds could start raining, she starts crying, and she cries profusely. It's written in the poem also that, her eyes are constantly filled with tears, so much that she can't see properly in the end, and she never finishes his portrait. So that's the complexity, which I think when we listen to the music, one can, the music emulates. Can I request you to please present the music of the painting along with?
Sure. So the Rag Dhanashri that is performed even today, it has this combination, or we believe it has this combination of sweetness and sorrow, because in the moment of remembering the beloved and the good time spent with the beloved, there is sweetness. But the awareness that the beloved is not with you brings with it sorrow. So this Rag has that combination. And let's see if you pick up on that as well. सखी मोहे मीत बता, सखी मोहे मीत बता, बता सखी मोहे मीत बता, बता सखी मोहे मीत बता, उन बिन भई हैरानी, सखी मोहे मीत बता, बता सखी मोहे मीत बता, उन बिन भई हैरानी, सखी मोहे मीत बता। जब से पी परदेस गए रे, जब से पी परदेस, पी परदेस, जब से पी परदेस गए रे, सदा रंग समझानी, सखी मोहे मीत बता, बता सखी मोहे मीत बता, बता सखी मोहे मीत बता, उन बिन भई हैरानी, सखी मोहे मीत बता, मीत बता, मीत बता। That was a short composition in Rag Dhanashti.
That's very nice. Yes. Hello? Okay. I want to quickly go back to the two pictures you showed us before, the two versions of these, of this picture. Yes, because it's very nice. You see that, yes, the main topic is the same, but different artists have different ways of expressing the same rag. And so I wanted to ask you, which of these two do speak more to you personally? Like, in which case where you say, oh wow, yeah, here I can see the grief and also the love of the Ragini.
That would be not fair of the artists, because I love all of these paintings. That's especially because of the clouds, But this one, there is actually a very beautiful detail in this painting. So when a part of my study on these paintings is to also study them scientifically, to do a scientific analysis on the paintings. So I study them under the ultraviolet light, under the infrared light, and infrared reflection and infrared transmission, to go and see why artists use certain pigments, or why did they use certain techniques which could bring the effect that it brought. So in this particular painting, when I was studying it, looking at it under the microscope, I found one detail which nobody can see otherwise. So just think of this painting, this on the right with the green face. This face is literally even smaller than the size of your thumb. Imagine it like that. And within that, there is this one fine detail that you can see the teardrops, but you could see it, I could see it only under the microscope. So artist made that she was crying and she wanted to portray it. So that's why I like this painting better, but because that captures more elements and it sets up the mood better, that's why I like that painting better. So I can't pick one.
But what about you? Yes, I'm really wondering.
I don't have a preference. Like Sonika said, they are both equally beautiful in their own ways. But when I think of this art form as an interdisciplinary art form, which is a combination of music, poetry, and a visual art, which is painting in this case, what I find remarkable is how the music has been visualized, how a poem has been rendered on an extremely small scale. If you've been looking at the measurements of the paintings, you would see that they're really quite tiny. And when you look at the detail over here, that is truly remarkable to make that kind of detail in this scale at a time when you did not have very advanced instruments to look more carefully. These people are not using magnifying glasses or anything. And the nuances that we have in our music also come out in the paintings in their own ways. For example, in the rag that I sang for in Dhanashri, this is a rag where we don't necessarily have a lot of mean or glides, but we are able to use certain ornaments. These kind of touches we are able to use, and they are so nuanced. They can be so subtle. But if you look at the detail of the paintings, at least the way I see it, the way the image of the man is being made on the slate, it is so very nuanced, and it speaks to me because it tells me that the people who work together at the times, the poets, the singers, the artists, there must have been a sort of camaraderie between them, a lot of exchange of their art forms and their philosophies and the thought process to make something like this possible. And the poem that I sang for you, the bandish that I sang for you, it's not necessary that this painting was inspired by that composition, but many compositions of Dhanashri have a certain theme like this, of this sweet separation and the sweet sorrow of separation rather. And that's what I find remarkable, that even over time, the painting is still relevant to the kind of poetry that has endured over the centuries. Does that answer your question, Samira?
Yes, of course, it does. And well, since we still have some time for this painting, I'd really like to ask about this bottle motif, which is found now on both paintings. I was really wondering, what is this all about? So at the walls, you see these, looks like two flacon-like things. Do you have an explanation for me?
Those are liquor decanters. They're supposed to be filled with liquor. For intoxication, for real-time intoxication. I wish we could have some here. But in the other painting, what we see also that the way she is sitting in the painting is actually a prescribed position for painting in the yogic asana. It's called Vir Asana, and that's how artists sit and paint. So it's a prescribed. So whoever made it, possibly a male artist, not a female artist. He literally brought the position correct, and it also shows us the way the artists use certain receptors. Those are the other lady, one of her friends, is holding a color receptor for her while she's painting. But I really wish I could see the finished portrait, but she never finished it, unfortunately.
Very unfortunate. Yes. Oh, this makes me think about one thing I wanted you to talk more about, because this is not about a raga. Yes, it's about a ragini. So it's the female counterpart to it. Maybe you can say something more about it, because we're always talking about raga with Ragamala, but of course there's also a lot of female figures in it to find.
Maybe you could comment on ragini and then I talk about.
No, I will not scientifically, but the way it is, I think we will go into the details of the notations and the move. But as per the musicologists and as per the some of the poets, now there were these countless melodies which were created. How do we tackle them? How do we handle them? How do we remember them? And how do we form an organized group which could be remembered by everybody? So what they did was they created certain families. So the most prominent of the 6 melodies became the heads or the husbands or the father of these families. So there are 6 families headed by 6.
The patriarchal method of looking at
patriarchal methodology, exactly. Each of them, now you will get really amazed at it. Each of them got 5 to 6 wives. And then the combination ragas of the male and the corresponding ragini became their sons and daughters. So it's a complex family system. And this whole unit, like the entire family structure, is called the Ragamala also. So that's where the raginis come to play. And I think, Vir, you should highlight on what is the musical difference between a raga and ragini. I think there is not.
There is not. Actually. So there have been a lot of different attempts to try and systematize this body of music, because this music has not been taught by, notating it, has not been taught by, writing it down. It's impossible to write down, really. Whatever you can write down is very limited. So this music has always been passed on orally across the generations. Today, there are some ways of, at least recording and capturing some elements of the music with modern technology, which is available to us. But over the century, it was what we call Shruti Vidya. You listen and you reflect, and then you create more of that music. So one of the attempts to systematize, at least for the sake of these paintings, which were displayed in the in royal palaces mostly, was what Sonika has just described as the Ragamala, where you make a fairly relatable framework of a family in this way. But in contemporary practice, you will not hear an artist referring to a melody on stage as a raga or a ragini. So I think the classification is more for the paintings, but in contemporary practice, almost everything is referred to as a rag. I can count on the fingers of one hand how many times I've heard an artist refer to a ragini on stage. In most cases, it's just called a rag. So, and they all do the same thing. They color the mind in different ways. So,
thanks a lot. Yes. Now this was already quite sad theme. Maybe can proceed to the next one.
I will give you even
sadder. Will you say something more? Thank you very much.
This is like how Vir explained it, that this is the sweet pain of separation. But what we see in the next is when you are really crazy in love, when you have lost a lover and you don't know, you're absolutely wandering, mindless. There have been situations, I think people sometimes go through that situation where there are absolutely, obvious things in front of you. You are doing certain things mindlessly because you're so lost in your own thoughts. And this is what the next painting represents. This is a beautiful painting, one of my favorites. It's called Asavari Ragini. And what we see in this painting, that in the center is a woman. She's again a dark complexion woman. She comes from a tribe. She's a tribal woman, and the tribe of snake charmers. And that's why we see a lot of snakes also. But then what's she doing here in this composition? What's happening here? So in India, in the central India, there are a lot of sandalwood forests. And sandalwood, the smell of the sandalwood is supposed to attract snakes, and especially cobras. And in these jungles, they're filled with snakes. And because of the abundance of snake, a tribe flourished around it, which is basically they learned how to tackle the snakes. So it's obvious that, everybody in the tribe, man or a woman or even children, would know how to tackle the snakes. And so what happens here is that this woman who is separated from her lover, the lover has gone away, and she is out wandering, not thinking much about where exactly is she going and what is happening around. And she goes on the top of a hill and she starts playing with the snakes. And when you tackle the snakes, and especially the cobras like here, they are bound to bite you. But the sting of the snakes is nowhere compared to the pain in her heart. That is what is shown in the painting. So deeply painful, but playful at the same time. And I think this is what reflects in the musical version of it as well.
When Sonika showed me Asavari and explained this metaphor, I was really struck because the melody of the rag Asavari to me is evocative of pain, and that pain is brought out in many different ways in the human experience, and in the in the art of music, that pain is often equated with the loss of someone that one cares deeply about. Not because necessarily they died, which could also be one interpretation of loss, but it could also be because they left, they went away, they had to go away for an extended period of time. And in those days when you had negligible communication technology, the pain and the uncertainty of the return could really build up in somebody. I'm sure everyone over here, if you look at your own lives, you would have had some experience of loss in some way. And if you really dig into that experience, perhaps you will relate it to the notes which I will attempt to sing for you of this rag called Asavari, or Ragini as it is known in the Ragamala system. I'm sorry, I need the tambour a little louder. Is there someone backstage who's... Yeah, I think someone heard me and did that. सजन गले लागिया साडिया सजन गले लागिया साडिया सजन गले लागिया साडे तोरे बिछुड़े हो गई लो बावरी तोरे बिछुड़े हो गई लो बावरी लाग रही अखियाँ नित सारिया सजन गले लागया साडिया सांस रटना जिया उनके सांस सांस रटना जिया उनके घड़ी न बिछुड़े मन पलच न कहिए घड़ी न बिछुड़े मन पलच न कहिए प्रेम प्रीत कर मन न बिसारे जाग रही अखियां नित सारिया सजन गले लागया साडिया साडिया साडिया
Wow.
I did take some chords.
Yeah, it was very deep. It's the thing which now, just now in this, just in this moment when you sang, impressed me quite real kind of deep as well. Was that, is it as soon as you add the drum, you would start with the poem? It's more like the drum or initiates the beats, initiates the words, or the vice versa. I do not know. And so I thought here it might be very nice to ask about the role of rhythm in all this music, because we haven't thematized it yet. And so really nice.
Super question.
About it.
Super question. What we call the lyrics in this kind of music, the word for it in our music is bandish. Bandish comes from the word band, and band means to tie. So the rag by itself is an unfettered melody. There is no limitation on it except for its own grammar, so its own being. We bind the raga using poetry and using rhythm. So, and we have different rhythm cycles. So what I've been singing in mostly today, all my selections today are in a 16 beat cycle, but we have 12, we have 10, we have 7, we have 9.5, 7.5. It's incredibly complex. But when we provide a rhythm cycle and when we provide the poetry, we bind one aspect of the raga, and that aspect is connected with emotions. It's like this. I refer to the rag sometimes as a personality also. So there is a dominant feeling there's a dominant style in everyone sitting over here. Each person would express pain, sorrow, joy in very specific ways. And some of us are let's say a little more cynical, or in general, a little more depressed. So even if we express joy, it will have a sharp and an edge to it of pain or whatever. Asavari is a rag like that. In the same rag, I can sing you a song of union as well. This is a song of separation. But even in that song of union, there is a sort of hidden pain. It's almost like I cannot forget that I was separated for such a long time, even though we have united, and that pain and that experience lingers with me. So the rhythm is one way of binding the rag, and it's super important. When we introduce the rhythm along with the poetry, the rhythm also helps the audience to start binding the rag in their own mind, in terms of its feeling and the overall vibe of the raga as it is imagined for that composition. It comes alive in the minds of the audience with the rhythm also. Thank you for asking that question.
See, wow. So the first part with loose syllables is like an intro to put, okay, the audience in a certain mood, to find it in it. Very nice. I was wondering, when you were singing the raga, would you have thought about a painful experience while expressing the sorrow, or would you think about the raga as a concept of pain of separation, as you said right now? Or are you kind of imagine a certain situation in order to kind of get yourself into the right state for actually expressing this in music?
It's a complex question and answer. I'll attempt to simplify it. So it differs for every performer, for every artist or practitioner of the music. Some of the styles within this music lay a lot of emphasis on the poetry, right? And some of the styles do not. For them, the the poetry is just a basic framework, or even the composition, the rhythm is a basic framework to provide some structure, but they deviate from that a lot. For them, it is the abstract nature of the raga which is much more important, and they would explore it in as many dimensions as they can. In other styles, the poetry takes precedence. So they would limit their expression of a raga in a particular recital to what best suits the poetry. So if I were to equate it with this, there are some styles which, even though the poetry is about pain, they would probably give 60% of their musical expression in that recital to pain. But there would be even some other elements also, because for them, completing the raga is more important. But other styles would stick very much to however they would like to express pain, because that is the dominant emotion in the poetry. So it is hard to say what comes first in the mind of the artist. It really depends on their approach to music and the style in which they've been groomed. But for me personally, the poetry matters a lot. So for me, I try to match the way I'm singing to what the words are.
I see. And words can differ, right?
Yes.
I bet there's a lot of different poetry in this regard.
Yes.
Speaking of having to make a choice, we were told before that there's actually always a whole circle of pictures whenever they're made. Has it something to do with this very idea that you shouldn't just, well, whenever there is one feeling in some subtle motions, there might also be another, but it's kind of like be implied in a sense that it has to be, well, complete in a sense of you cannot just express one thing, you got to do it universally, and therefore you must pay. It was kind of like, okay, pay homage to every rock, or kind of paint all in the circle. And it's just like, maybe it's a crazy idea, but
see, even just one painting does not represent one emotion. There are so many layers to it. Right. So within one composition, artist is trying here to capture as many moods to a specific aesthetic experience. Right. So here there is pain, but at the same time, she is missing. So she's also thinking of the good times that she has spent, and also anticipation that someday maybe it will come back. Right. So there are layers to it. So we cannot necessarily say that, one painting depicts, or if he has made 6 paintings, he has captured the 6 emotions. So within a circle of paintings, artists and the poets also, they have tried to capture as many human emotions, complexities of the emotions as possible. Before we end this session, so there is this one beautiful ragini called Bhairavi, which is usually devotional in nature, and it's a she depicted in the painting. And let's look at it. This beautiful ragini. What happens in this painting is that she's on a journey. She has taken Lord Shiva in her brain as the husband, and she wants somebody like Shiva as a life partner. So what she does is, I'm going into a little bit of background to the story here, that Shiva's wife Parvati, and Lord Shiva is one of the most difficult gods to appease. So to be able to be closer to Shiva, or to get his blessings, one needs to do really rigorous exercise and esoteric practices and whatnot. And the wife Parvati did all of that for years. She left the home, she went into the wilderness to find Shiva as the lover. Now in India, the young girls, right from a very, like the adolescent age, they are, they're told these stories, and they're also made to do the same thing, like waking up early in the morning, taking a shower, or going actually to the river and take a dip in the river, and then go to the temple and worship Shiva. So this is the journey wherein she thinks of the Lord constantly in the mind, that she wants, so in this particular painting, there is a lot of divinity, because she wants to be closer to the divine, feeling, to Shiva himself. And interestingly, this performance in typical Indian classical musical concerts, a concert ends with this particular ragini? Is there a reason behind it?
Yeah, this Ragini Bhairavi, Rag Bhairavi, has only flat notes and one natural note. And such is the effect of this, that after singing this, the mind is colored in so powerfully that it is very difficult to sing something else. So usually it is reserved for the last rendition in any concert. And if there are multiple artists, only the last artist will perform Bhairavi. It is considered extremely impolite to sing Bhairavi before the final artist has sung. So the last performance of the final artist is likely to be Bhairavi. Not always, but almost always is Bhairavi for this reason.
May I please request it?
So we actually found Sanskrit verse, which belongs to a larger set of verses in praise of the divine feminine or the goddess. And I will sing that for you. The meaning is given below in the slide. What Sonika shared with you has reminded me of a story. So Indian culture, in terms of communication, is it's a dialectical culture. So a lot of concepts are communicated through stories. And Shiva, who is one way in which we visualize divinity, is said to have married a woman called Parvati. And Parvati went through great austerities to win the heart and hand of Shiva. She performed yogic practices to an extremely high standard and under extremely difficult conditions. And it is said that Shiva finally appeared and then they were joined. Now, this is a metaphor for the journey that any individual makes in order to connect with whatever is their understanding of divinity. And when that happens, there is no distinction between the seeker and what is sought. So Parvati, by metaphorically winning Shiva's hand, herself attained to divinity and is so revered as a goddess today. I'd just like to call that out because of what Sonika shared. And I won't explain the words, but I will just sing the verse. And one more thing, just as a short treat, I will transition from the verses to a composition in 16-beat cycles where we don't use words anymore. We just use sounds, just to say that music can take you from the formless to the formed, but there are ways to approach the formless again at the end. Could I have the tanpura a little louder, please? पुनीत पद पंकजा श्री कामेश्वर आंखगा मनुकोटि पारायणी मनुकोटि पारायणी निरंजनी नारायणी निरंजनी tadare dani dere na dere na dere na 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 tadani tana dere na tana dere na tana dere na tana dere na dere na dere na dere na tadare dani dere na dere na dere na na dere 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 dim tana dere na na dere 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 tom dere dere tadani na dere 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 tom dere dere tadani na dere 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 tom dere dere tadani tom tadani dere dani tom tadani dere dani tom tadani dere dani tana dere na tana dere na tana dere na tana dere na dere na dere na dere na tadare dani dere na dere na dere na tadare dani dere na 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 tadani dere na dere na dere na. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.